Haman Nature, a journey in search of a peaceful and prosperous society with human nature as a guide. Led by your host, Adam Haman.
Hello and welcome to Haman Nature. With me, as always, the spiky, the effervescent, the plaid-ally attired Tyrone. How are you doing, buddy?
Adam, I got to tell you, man, I am extra spiky today.
That's good because I'm going to need all your spikiness because I am very depressed. I was at a libertarian meetup last night, just a little party, little get-together. But there were some people there that had not learned the one true way that is libertarianism, and I was trying to, explain to them the benefits to society and humanity of a much smaller government, ideally no coercive monopoly government at all. And I thought I was getting pretty where I was like making some traction. I thought I might have a convert, spread the gospel far and wide. I was feeling pretty cocky. And then this person said to me, "Yeah, but Adam, without government, who would build the roads?" And I got to tell you, man, I was just floored. I'd never thought of that. I mean, I've read 50, 60 books on libertarianism and economics, political philosophy, how a non-monopolistic government could work. I'm still hoarse over it. I'm so flummoxed. I'd literally it never occurred to me how, we'd have people on one section of the world and then like goods and services and other people they might want to see on another section of the world. And how in the world could we lay flat strips of asphalt from one end to the other without a monopoly guy? So I said, kudos, checkmate, you win. I'm giving up libertarianism. I'm going to vote for Kamala Harris. I'm a changed man. I'm very depressed.
Well, all sarcasm aside, Adam, the reason why I'm extra spiky today, because like you, I was stuck in traffic the other day driving into work, and it seems like more and more people are coming back into the office following the shutdown stuff, and every day seems to get worse and worse, and I'm like, oh, I forgot how bad traffic used to be. And then, while I'm honking my horn and yelling uselessly to move up 3 more inches, it reminded me of an article you had written. I believe the title was California Roads Are Trash or something like that. And I thought you made a lot of great points, and since it's on my mind and I got to get it off my chest, I thought maybe we could talk about that article. And yes, go into the perennial question libertarians get no matter what, no matter how many years have passed, how long we've been around. Who will build the roads? My God.
Yeah. Let me plug the website there, hamannature.com or hamannature.substack.com, where you can find a whole bunch of thoughtful articles written 3 or 4 a week with pithy titles like California Roads Are Trash, because they are. And yeah, so this is bumper to bumper traffic you're suffering from in Minneapolis, yeah?
Yeah, right. Oh, I can imagine LA is about 100 times worse, though.
Yeah, it's rough. And I was inspired to write that article. I traveled from Las Vegas, where I live, to Southern California for I forget what. And, we have a coercive monopoly government here in Las Vegas building our roads, so they're not great. But I can only assume that the government of California actively despises its citizens and the people who drive cars there because they're just so much worse. And this despite having the highest gasoline taxes. I mean, it's not like they're starved for money to take care of these roads that they demand a monopoly privilege to be in charge of, with the very rare exception of toll roads, which I assume have some crony incestuous relationship with the government too. But yeah, as I was destroying the undercarriage of my car driving down that crappy California road, I was just like, yeah, I think a private situation, a private enterprise could handle this better.
Yeah, and for all those people out there that may be seeing this for the first time or wondering about who will build the roads, Libertarians get that question so many times that finally the great Walter Block, who has done yeoman's work in libertarian theory, I know he's come a bit under fire lately for his stance on other topics, but I don't think that should denigrate his previous work in any way. Wrote the book on the libertarian solution to who will build the roads. A whole big book. I think it's humongous, like 600 pages or something, right?
It's magnificent. We'll put a link in the video description. I believe it's called The Privatization of Roads and Highways by, yes, Walter Block. And he just covers the whole thing, soup to nuts. I mean, I joked about me thinking, misunderstanding that the problem is, how could humans lay asphalt? Obviously, that's not the true problem. The problem is, how will you intelligently coordinate such things as traffic and streets without one monopolistic overseer? And what Walter does is lay out all the various possible ways that these supposedly insurmountable challenges can be overcome just by allowing the freedom of association. If you just want a Cliff Notes version, it's it's pretty simple. If there's a market for something and people are left free, then people will come along to solve the problem, provide the service, and the structure of ownership. The great thing about freedom is we can't say exactly what it's going to look like in every case, but some coordinated structure of ownership will come along that will satisfy the interests of people who want some sort of a thoroughfare to get from point A to point B. You just don't need to worry about that. And if you really want the details, again, buy Walter Block's book and read it, and he will lay everything out to you in no uncertain terms.
I know that the Mises Institute also used to have a free version. You could download the PDF of this book for free. I'm not sure they still do, but you might check that out too, folks, if you want to save yourself a few bucks.
Yeah, I'm not sure either, but we'll put that link down too.
So, Adam, I would say there have been two libertarian philosophers that have had the biggest impact on my later in life libertarian viewpoint. So obviously, my number one influence was my father. Grew up a libertarian. He was a libertarian, so I'm second generation libertarian. I like being able to say something like that because it sounds so woke. I'm second generation libertarian.
Sick brag, yo.
Sick brag. But then, of course, you have your foundational philosophers, right? You've got Bastiat, you've got Thomas Sowell, Walter Williams, Ron Paul, those guys, Harry Brown. I'm thinking of those that were early influences, in my teenage years, early 20s, Ayn Rand, all that stuff. And and that helped me form a set of libertarian thoughts and beliefs. And I held on to those for quite some time. And it wasn't until, later in my life, after my development, I got to that part that I kind of discovered Stephan Kinsella. Kinsella upended my thoughts on property or intellectual property, right? Well, similarly, Walter Block upended some of my thoughts on property rights, specifically as it would relate to, let's say, a road, for example. So you may or may not be familiar with this amazing Latin phrase, quis est solum, eius est usque ad coelum et ad infernos. Yep, that's it.
Caesar could not have said it better himself.
Hey, I took Latin in high school. I'm pretty sure my pronunciation was at least 50%.
Ooh, I don't know.
All right. So anyway, this is the legal doctrine, or it's a principle of property law, stating that property holders have rights not only to the plot of land itself, but also above and, in a broader formulation, the ground below. The principle is often referred to in its abbreviated form as the ad coelum doctrine. So basically, this is the doctrine that you, in a way, infinitely own above and below you on a plot of land. And I used to think that way in libertarian, or just that's the way I kind of formulated property rights, that I've homesteaded a piece of land, but I've really homesteaded the space, right? I've homesteaded the air around me. I must have homesteaded something under the surface of the ground. I have a basement or electrical lines or something like that. And so I used to have this theory that, so those rights must extend infinitely up and down, or in some way. And Walter Block totally blew me out of the water on that one, saying, nope, that is the wrong way to think about it. And in fact, that's not the way we think about it today, actually. And so maybe that's why I thought that's the way it should be, because it's contra to what we have today. But obviously, if that were true, airplanes wouldn't be able to fly over you, because you say, I own that air you're flying through. So Walter Block correctly points out, look, suppose I'm a private road builder and I want to build a road from my business to that other guy's business, and the road I want to pave goes straight through your house. Government might come along and just use eminent domain and screw you over. But in a truly libertarian world, in an honest world, the contractor, the builder would come to you and make you an offer on your house. Hey, I want to build this road. I will pay you 3 times what your house is worth if I can do that. And you say no. You say, and the contractor says, oh, okay, I guess I'm out of luck. In today's world, we just get government to use force and blow down your house and bulldoze it. But in a libertarian world, the contractor would say, that's fine. I was willing to offer you 3 times what your house is worth. It's going to cost me more to build the road. I'm just going to build it over you. So I'm going to build a bridge right over your house. How do you like that? Now, I'm not saying that's how libertarians would solve this, but you can see how this infinite theory doesn't work. And once you understand that, once you understand the true definition of the homesteading principle, you can see how in a libertarian, in a free society, people would negotiate with each other to build roads and infrastructure that actually work for people.
Yeah, the key point there is that just by definition, the government choice for how to allocate these resources, whether a house should be there or a road should be there, if they decide that through the political means, it's never going to be as, quote, efficient as voluntary exchange will be. And by efficient, we don't mean, just economizing by somebody's perspective. It means satisfying the desires of all the people involved, as demonstrated by the choices that they make. And maybe that guy does have an irrational love for his house, and he doesn't want to give it for 3x or 5x or 100x. Well, that's okay. But, on average, that's not going to be the way things work out. The way things work out is people are going to, respond to monetary incentives, and then the roads will flow where houses are least desired, and where thoroughfares are. But the way you were taught property rights is the exact same way I was. That funny Latin phrase concept, extending down into the earth and up to the heavens. And then the way it was taught to me anyway is like, that's the proper formation of property rights. But then government comes along and then abrogates it through saying they have government interest in controlling the skies, and maybe they've got government interest in controlling mineral resources for X, Y, and Z reasons. But it wasn't Block who blew my understanding of property rights or expanded them or made them more coherent. It was Rothbard, really.
Mm-hmm.
And his homesteading principle just made a lot more sense. You don't necessarily homestead everything, under your feet. You've homesteaded what your experience is on this property, what you're doing with it. And if somebody could come along and mine underneath you and not disturb that in the slightest, he's not disrupting anything that you've homesteaded. With your example of a road builder, just just jamming that the bridge over your house, he might be violating something you homesteaded, like the view or something like that, or noise pollution. So there are property right. If you understand property rights from a coherent libertarian Rothbardian approach, it starts to make a hell lot more sense. And that doesn't tell you what the answer is going to be when these interests come into conflict, but at least gives you the correct principle by which to evaluate the situation, which is worth its weight in gold.
Right. And another objection I get when it comes to the roads, it's kind of similar to environmentalists objecting to, building another factory, because they see the world the way it is today and think that's the way it should be. I mean, Earth's been around 6 billion years, but somehow the way it is right now, that's the right version, right? So we shouldn't change anything. So I also think people, when it comes to the roads, will be like, well, if we didn't have the government, what about interstate 35 or Interstate 5 or Interstate 90. Well, you mean those wouldn't exist? Yeah, those probably wouldn't
Probably not.
exist.
Yeah, probably not.
Instead of the billions and billions of dollars that were spent in adjusted dollars, with one purpose. It wasn't so that you folks could get from drive from Washington D.C. to L.A. so they could transport military equipment across
That's
country
correct.
as fast as possible.
That's
It
correct.
wasn't there for you guys. It wasn't there for your convenience. You're right. The interstate system wouldn't exist. Things would look radically differently. But it'd be the point is we believe it would be better than what we have today.
Right. Yeah, it's important for people that live in 2024 to understand that the modern highway system is not a natural outgrowth of the freedom of exchange. It's a government boondoggle. And the railroads were also before it. And libertarians make the argument that we do not know what transcontinental travel would look like, or state to state travel would look like without government interference. All we do know is that it would come about through freedom of association, and that just has to be better. And it's not like another argument they'll make is that it's some sort of a right, a human right to be able to travel on a road from Nevada to Missouri or whatever. Well, that's not the case. A thoroughfare is a good to be produced on a market like anything else. And if you're going to insist that it's some sort of a right of yours, well, you're just demanding that other people be taxed to pay for the thing to be built, which is immoral. And again, if you want things provided at a low cost and a good quality, the last thing you would want is a monopolist to do so. They're really bad at that. All the incentives are misaligned for you to get the thing that you want provided to you at a low cost and in good quality.
Yeah, and I can't resist to take a moment to rag on my own state. But let me go back to that real quick. Let's suppose this is a proper function of government, that we all agree we want the government to build the roads. We just want that system. And you're like, okay, great. So then what I have to ask you is, when you're sitting in that traffic, bumper to bumper, cursing and screaming and breathing in all that exhaust, do you think they're doing a good job? do you think, or do you think this is the best that can humanly be done? Nobody can do better than this. It's crazy. I mean, traffic sucks, but at least we have some roads, because otherwise we wouldn't have roads at all. So take what you can get, I guess. I mean, it's ridiculous. I mean, if we said that about any other product, on average in America, 40,000 people die on the roads. If McDonald's kills one person, they're out of business, man.
Yeah.
So like this is a crappy product. It's a crappy product. We don't want government building schools, or people do. Sorry. I don't want government building restaurants. Why would I want them building roads or schools, for that matter? I don't know.
Yeah, when you look at it, it's either, I mean, like I said in my article, the traffic coming in and out of Vegas from Southern California is just gross every single weekend. Southbound on the I-15, traffic goes from 3 lanes here down to 2 going into California, which just makes it look like an exercise in sadism, like the California government just hates the populace. But
yeah,
it's also got boondoggle written all over it, because much like all the billions of dollars being thrown into that central California corridor bullet train project, which is wildly over budget. They've connected almost no stops. I don't think it's ever going to be completed. Well, similarly, they've promised to build a bullet train from Las Vegas to Southern California, and they say they're going to run it right down the middle of I-15, which, if you've ever taken that drive, it's insane. It's insanity. And they hired some crony company out of Florida who's apparently done train projects down there in the flatlands. And they think they're going to, the promises they've made about speed and cost are just crazy. This is a boondoggle works program for corrupt individuals being handed out by politicians who are being bribed to throw money from a slush fund, California money and federal money. And I just hate every bit of it. That's the other problem with insisting that a monopolist control your tax money and provide you these goods and services is unless you found angelic beings to be the arbiters of this money and these decisions, you're going to have corruption. It's inevitable, and you see it all around. I don't think this train project will ever be completed ever, but if it is, it'll cost a whole lot more than a tank of gas, on a road, and trillions will probably be spent of taxpayer money before it's even completed. And it's not like the train's free. You gotta
Right.
spend. They say it's going to be $100 or something, and take about the same time as a car trip. But of course, you'll need an Uber or a rental car at either end of the trip, or public transportation if you hate your own life and don't value your own safety. Um, yeah, so this is just a way to take taxpayer money and give it to politically connected, corrupt individuals, and not provide you anything better than just a car trip. So not only do they not give you good roads, they deny you the road altogether and give you something even worse. It's crazy.
Yeah, and the reason why governments can get away with this is because it's distributed costs, right?
Yes.
So it's not as though Californians are paying for this. Everybody in the country is paying for this because it's getting federal subsidy funds, as I recall your
Yep.
article. So like I said, I can't resist ragging on my own state. So I want to do this one real quick since you're talking about a boondoggle. This is the greatest boondoggle probably in Minnesota history. 20 plus years ago, when Jesse, I ain't got time to bleed, Ventura was the governor of Minnesota. That's right, guys. Minnesota, we keep cranking them out. We gave you Jesse. Now we're giving you Walls. All right. Um, like I said, if the one job the government's supposed to have is to do the roads, to build roads, and you got all this major congestion, how about this as an idea, guys? Build more roads. But instead, what did we decide to go down a path? We're going to build these light rail systems.
Mm.
Okay. You want to talk about a boondoggle? This thing is so over budget. It's been going on for 20 years. Billions and billions and billions and billions and billions. And I don't even ride the light rail. I mean, it's nothing but homeless shelter and drug addicts hanging out in some of these light rail cars. But there's one light rail that's actually getting built near where I live, which nobody's happy about. There's going to be a stop that extends all the way into the western suburbs of Minneapolis. Now, this was supposed to be completed in 2018. This one line of this light rail. It's 2024. They're still building it. We're at least $1 billion over budget just on that one line. They're now saying it might open in 2026 or 2027. Who knows? I mean, good. You can't even build a road. They can't even build roads. So guy who doesn't want to be a libertarian because who would build the roads? Dude, do you think it's working now?
I'm older than you, but I remember, because I was alive in the 80s and the 70s, that we used to have a better intuition about this, just in the zeitgeist, about what it is when the government builds something, because we had the Soviet Union to look at.
Mm-hmm.
And we still have, North Korea and Cuba, but for some reason or another, that doesn't sort of big an example. But we knew that the quote unquote infrastructure in the Soviet Union was trash because it's being provided by a Politburo and a 5-year plan, and there's no economic calculations. It's crazy. It doesn't make any sense. But for some reason, when we talk about the infrastructure in America, we just don't think about it that way. We think of it as a quote unquote public good. There's no such thing, that the government, just has to provide, because it doesn't make any sense for anybody else to provide it. And it's a shame. And I mean, I don't wish the Soviet Union were still around, but it was useful to have that example out there, so to point to go, oh yeah, governments are terrible at this. Do not entrust them with the production and maintenance of something so important, or guess what? It's going to be ruined. It's just going to be trash, as California roads are. Trash.
That is a really interesting point. I didn't think about that. Today's generation or the world doesn't have a good counterpoint example.
Yeah,
because you
even
can't.
China used
Mhm.
to be, a better example of that. But since they, you know, added a little bit more capitalism into their,
Right,
communist structure, the point doesn't land as well.
right, right, right.
Um, so yeah, it is kind of unfortunate that our just general mental model of what government production of goods and services is doesn't have that as a benchmark.
Well, the one good thing that, the shutdown did was, man, you could drive on the roads. Whenever you had to drive, there was no traffic, there was no it was quiet, it was eerie, and so at least that gives us, at least something good is coming about, and thanks again to technology that eventually more and more people are going to be working from home. We're obviously going to be transitioning to that model. We did it. We did an experiment on it, showed that it could work. People liked it. They relocated their lives to adjust for it. They're gonna want that back. And people are gonna want to move from home. So eventually, the roads are going to become obsolete. Maybe not obsolete, but you know, we won't have to spend as much money on them. Let's hope.
Yeah, I'm not so confident that the work from home thing is going to last. But I do wish that whatever way it shakes out, I wish the forces involved, the incentives that people faced as they made that decision, both hiring and taking jobs. I wish we didn't have a government funded. I wish the roads were private, so at least that cost structure and annoyance structure was a natural run rather than one foisted upon us by government. Because it would be useful if people knew what it would cost in money and time to travel from the house to the office, and then
Mhm.
an employer and an employee could make a rational decision about it. But now we just sort of have to take what the government gives us and then make some sort of an adaptive decision around it. Even if employment uh, started using less and less of the roads because of telecommuting and whatnot, it doesn't follow that there would be, how should I say this? If less commuting was happening on the roads, you would expect more leisure travel to be done.
Mm.
Like if you're working at home, you're probably not going to actually be at home on the computer all the time. So the time you would have spent in an office building downtown, you'll be driving around your local suburb, maybe doing errands or doing
Mhm.
something else. And vacation time, luxury, leisure time.
Sure.
So there's still going to be a need for roads, even if telecommuting becomes a thing. And I just wish that we would get actual market prices so that people could make rational decisions about how to use this resource and how to provide more of this resource. Because right now, it's sort of the kind of madness you get from government production of a service.
Well, Adam, I suggest people go check out your article. The only thing that makes I hate more than traffic is talking about traffic. So let's let's
And here we
let's
did
move
it.
on and never talk about roads again.
And here we talked about traffic for a half an hour. You must be very stupid or very passionate. Um, yeah, I would like to just make sure to double down and reiterate I didn't change my political philosophy because of a conversation about roads last night. Well, I'm glad you enjoyed the article, Tyrone. I hope you find people enjoyed us talking about it, even though it's about traffic. I'm sorry, California, but your roads are trash. Visit us at hamannature.com, hamannaturesubstack.com to sign up and be a subscriber. And thank you very much for watching Haman Nature. Catch you next time.